Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Greetings of peace, mercy, and blessings, everyone. Thank you for watching Alhambra Studio Foundation. This is Aziz Live 360. This video yet is part of the Arabic language extensive course. And before we dive into the Arabic alphabets, with the intent to master the articulation points, which will ultimately help us maximize efficiency and fluency in your second language, in this case, the Arabic language, we want to also maximize your language learning experience by getting to know the history of the Arabic language. Today, we'll focus on tracing the Arabic language roots, development, and varied dialects in order to provide deserving facts to give credit to the language of the Quran. It's worth mentioning that there have been attempts to discredit the Arabic language by Western scientists in order to minimize its importance in the current geopolitical, economic, and even religious spectrum. Universities such as Yale, Harvard, and others have produced massive lectures about this unique language, but fell far short of expectations to honor such a language because they are afraid of ideas. They are fearful of anything that starts with Arabic. As in modern era, anti-Arabism, anti-Islam is apparent in many nations. We will, however, focus on educating, inspiring, and transforming with the intention to make language available to all humanity. Having said that, there are only a few who desire to learn a second language in the Western world, especially the Arabic language. Thus, as the Islamic world continues to play a major role in international affairs, the shortage of workers in the West who are fluent in the Arabic language is glaringly extreme. Knowledge of the language will open up many opportunities as the Islamic world is integrated into the global economy, considering that it is the biggest market for export of goods and services as its population have tripled and growing. Understand that Arabic is a very rich language. Its history is as complex as the history of the countries that use the Arabic language. And as you'll probably find out, when you learn to speak Arabic, it is a unique language. It can indeed be one of the most challenging languages to learn without the right courses and resources. Anyone who tells you that the Arabic language is easy to learn, that's untrue. Arabic is one of the most difficult language of all languages. And I am not trying to discourage you from learning the Arabic language, but I want you to be realistic about the language of the Quran, the language of the final divine revelation. It is also one of the Semitic languages and one of the oldest spoken and written language, having existed alongside the Syriac, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Phoenician languages. Arabic has a history that stretches as far back as the 9th century BC. It belongs to the Central Semitic language branch and closely akin to its sister languages mentioned earlier. Arabic, however, is considered to be part of the Arabo-Canaanite sub-branch of the central group of the Western Semitic languages. Therefore, Arabic is the largest member of the Semitic language family. Out of all the Semitic languages, Arabic is the largest and has been for over 1440 years. Meaning, Arabic is the only surviving Semitic language that is spoken by millions of people today. Think about it. That's one of the miracles of the Arabic language. It is very important not only for Muslims, as it is the language of the Quran, but also for the Arab Christians and Jews, as it is most used in their churches and synagogues. Often, I can't assume the faith of the Arabic-speaking person that I'm having a conversation with, since we have Arab Christians and Arab Jews who dominantly speak Arabic as their native. As a religious language, it is spoken by more than 500 million people around the world and is learned in different proficiency levels as a revered liturgical language by Muslims worldwide. Since the time of its creation, it has had time to develop unique characteristics that set it apart from other languages of the world. The many forms of spoken Arabic in existence today are specifically called dialects and are mainly used for oral communication only. They exist parallel to Fusha, or classical and modern standard Arabic, which is primarily used in its written form, but also used orally by the media, newspapers, literatures, schools, and most formal settings. Among all the spoken varieties that are used today, Fusha, or classical and modern standard Arabic, is quite distinct from all other spoken forms of Arabic, as it is the formal and more conservative. Fusha means clear or elegant language in Arabic. These two forms, Fusha, or classical and modern standard Arabic, and dialects now exist in diglossia, meaning that they are used side by side for different functions in society. Now, I want to make a very clear distinction about the different Arabic names we might hear. Mainly, I just want to clear the confusion. We have names like classical Arabic language, modern standard Arabic, and Fusha. These names are all the same. Classical Arabic, modern standard Arabic, and Fusha are all one, meaning clear and elegant. And for simplicity's sake, we're going to use Fusha instead of mentioning classical and modern standard in the future. It's the language nature used mainly in formal settings. If you go, for example, to Morocco, Fusha is only used in the media, schools, courts, and so forth. However, the Moroccan Darija, that is the Moroccan dialect, is used in the streets, coffee shops, souks, bazaars, and so forth for communication purposes only. Fusha is very special as it has volumes of texts that have been created in this form, especially during the Islamic civilization's golden age. Texts include classical Arabic literature, texts, Islamic religious texts, and scholarly contribution in various fields such as sociology, mathematics, astrology, astronomy, medicine, and science that were written in the Middle Ages. Likewise, when learning Arabic as a foreign language, most students would be exposed to Fusha in its written and oral forms as well. Now, some of you might ask, how about the Quran language, or the Arabic language of the Quran? Indeed, the Quran was revealed in the Arabic language. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, glory be to him, honored the descendants of Ismail alayhi salam, or Ishmael, by choosing not only the Arabic as the language of the final divine revelation, but also Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, peace be upon him, as the seal of the prophets to be the guidance for humanity. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran many times, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم, بلسان عربي مبين إنا أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا إنا جعلناه قرآنا عربيا وكذلك أنزلناه حكما عربيا وهذا لسان عربي مبين وكذلك أنزلناه قرآنا عربيا غير ذي عوج كتاب فصلت آياته قرآنا عربيا وهذا كتاب مصدق لسانا عربيا. So many examples in the Quran that tells us basically we have revealed this Quran in perfect and eloquent Arabic. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Arabic to be the language of the Quran. That doesn't mean it's the language of the Arabs. There is a distinction here. Yes, the Arabs speak the Arabic language, while the Quran is kalamullah, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Arabs can't speak the kalamullah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We can read it, understand it, and use some of it as a form of worship. But we can't speak the Arabic language of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because it is kalamullah. Arabic grammarians, linguists, and professionals use the language like the one of the Quran as their standard since it is a fusha, clear and eloquent. But they can't speak the language of the Quran. Nobody can. We shall expand on this in the next coming episodes, inshallah, especially when the revelation of the Quran occurred and the challenging message to Arabs and humanity. Moving forward, and if you're traveling to any Arabic-speaking country in the future, it is important to remember that a different Arabic dialect is used in each region, which other people may or may not understand. There are 4 major regional dialects of Arabic spoken in the Arab world today, with dialectic variations in different countries. The Arabic of the Maghrib, or North Africa, 2, the Egyptian Arabic, which is in Egypt and Sudan, 3, the Levantine Arabic, which is in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Palestine, and 4 is the Iraqi or Gulf Arabic, which is mainly spoken in Iraq. Speaking of dialects, there are several differences that separates dialects from Fusha. For one thing, the grammatical structure of a dialect is simpler. There are expressions and words that could be unique to a particular dialect. The style and vocabulary of spoken Arabic are casual, and the expressions and slangs used do not have exact Arabic Fusha equivalents. Take, for example, the Moroccan dialect, the Darija. Its unique vocabulary and structure cannot be understood by many other people, Arabic speakers, including those in the Middle East. Compounding the diversity and its exhibition of strong linguistic and historical Berber, French, and Spanish influence is the fact behind its survival in the Mediterranean culture. That's why the Berbers, or the Berber language, refused to be conquered and remained spoken and written to this day. Linguistic evidence seems to point out that it was in the Arabian Peninsula that this Semitic language, the Arabic language, was born. Over several millenniums, the language spread to other areas outside the peninsula through migration into nearby areas and many parts of the Middle East. The Arab conquests of the 7th century Christian era spread the language farther afield as speakers of many forms of Arabic dialects brought their religion and their language across the Middle East, North Africa, the Iberian Peninsula, and China. Intermarriages also with indigenous peoples in the areas where the Arabic speakers settled caused the language to spread further and even made Arabic a very prominent language. Before tracing the formation of the Arabic writing system, and before delving deeper into the origin of the beautiful Arabic script, let us take a look first at the origin of writing itself. We're not talking about the original writer of the first human to write. We'll get to that, inshallah, later in the stories of the prophets, peace be upon them all. So writing was actually a relatively new invention and originated in many places, including Mesopotamia, present-day Iraq, in 3100 BC Christian era, ancient China around 2000 BC, and ancient Egypt about 3000 BC. The hieroglyphics of ancient Egypt is still the subject of debate today, as scholars are still undecided whether it was an original invention or something that came from Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq. The Egyptian hieroglyphics was quite complex. It was not considered an alphabet because of many reasons. Some individual signs either represented 1, 2, or 3 consonants, while some represented full words. An unknown person living in the Syria-Palestine area around 1500 BC was actually the one who created the alphabet, wherein one symbol stood for one sound and only one sign represented each sound. It was only when the Phoenicians adopted that alphabet, that it became known to the world. They were the original settlers in present-day Lebanon, who then moved to westward to Al-Maghrib, which is modern-day Morocco. They spoke a Semitic language, and samples of their inscriptions dating back to 1000 BC have been discovered. Several groups of people located in the ancient Near East adopted the writing system of the Phoenicians, including the Arameans, inhabitants of present-day central and southern Syria, and the ancient Hebrews. Because Phoenicians were also traveling merchants, they carried the language to many parts of the world, including England and France, by the way. Around 9th century BC, the ancient Greeks eventually adopted the writing systems of the Phoenicians. There were distinctions between the Phoenician and ancient Greek writing systems. Each symbol in the Phoenician writing system corresponded to a consonant, as vowels were not written because consonants had more weight in Semitic languages, and vowels were predictable and therefore omitted. In Greek, which is an Indo-European language, consonants and vowels carried equal importance. Thus, the Greeks created symbols to represent the vowels. The completed alphabet was later adopted by the Etruscans, then the Romans, and became largely used by other languages. Writing was formulated numerous times, but the alphabet was constructed only once, with everything that exists today being descendants of the original alphabet completed by the Greeks. It doesn't matter how different they are shaped and formed, they are linked to the original sources. Arabs inhabiting the Arabian Peninsula, however, took up their writing system from the Nabateans, al-Anbat in Arabic, who were Arab people living in Petra, present-day Jordan, during the time of Christ on earth, alayhi salam, peace be upon him. Nabateans adopted the writing system of the Arameans, who adopted it from the Phoenicians, with the long process of evolution of the Arabic writing system. The shapes of the letters varied greatly until it didn't show any resemblance from its very first origin. This was finally confirmed when a discovery in 2014 by a French Saudi expedition team held the oldest known inscription in the Arabic alphabet at a site located near Najran in Saudi Arabia. The script corresponds to a period in which there was a missing link between Nabatean and Arabic writing. The first thing that makes this find significant is that it is a mixed text known as Nabatean Arabic, the first stage of Arabic writing. The Nabatean script was developed from Aramaic writing during the 2nd century BC and continued to be used until around 4th or 5th century. Nabatean is therefore considered the direct precursor of the Arabic script. Nabatean script is a close ancestor, and the Najran style is the missing link between the Nabatean and the first Kufi inscriptions. Until this discovery, one of the earliest inscriptions in the Arabic language was written in the Nabatean alphabet, found in Namara, modern-day Syria. It is on display at the Louvre in Paris, in France. During the course of the Islamic or Arab conquests, Islam was spread over the Arabian Peninsula together with the writing system, which was adapted to write various languages, whether they were related or not to Arabic. This allowed other languages such as Urdu and Persian, which are Indo-European languages, to be written in Arabic. Fascinating. It was also used to write Turkish, an Altaic language, until 1928. In several instances, Arabic was used to write Latin, Hebrew, Hungarian, Polish, Afrikaans, and Spanish as well. Aside from the practical use of Arabic writing, it also has an aesthetic side, a beautiful writing, which in Greek is called calligraphy, is one of Islam's highly developed art forms in ancient times as it is today. Check out our videos, Islamic Calligraphy, Brief History. I shall put the link in the comment section below. With a rich vocabulary, great style, and elegant script, it is one of the few surviving Semitic languages written from right to the left, besides Hebrew and Aramaic. A large part of its development could be attributed to poetry during the pre-Islamic period, where the poet actually stressed the importance and prestige of each tribe. Arabia was then an important market town, with Mecca being the main center for religion, culture, and trade. In that area, the most powerful family back then was the Quraysh clan, and their language was adopted as the area's main dialect. Specialists in the science of comparative languages believe that the Arabic language is nearest to the mother language from which all the Semitic languages emanated. This preservation of Arabic is due to the divine intervention. There is disagreement among researchers in the science of comparative languages concerning when was the Arabic language originated and who was the first to speak the Arabic language. It is difficult to state a clear and precise origin of the time and place of the Arabic language, but for sure it is one of the Semitic languages. Some say Ismail alayhi salam or Ishmael was the first who spoke the plain and pure Arabic after he had learned its fundamentals from Jurhum, or it might be that Ishmael was the best one among his brothers in speaking pure Arabic. Al-Qurtubi rahimahullah commented on this, saying the sound opinion is that Adam among human beings was the first to speak various languages. The Holy Quran states this clearly, and he taught Adam all the names of everything. No doubt that languages are full of names. In other words, Arabic is one of them, since languages are included on the concept of names. This is also proved in the Sunnah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam all the names of everything. To sum up, in a modern world, Arabic is of critical importance. Aside from being a living medium of contemporary culture and literature, the economic and political developments in the Arab world made writing, speaking, reading, and understanding Arabic a scale of very high value. Tracing its roots, development, and understanding its many forms is the beginning of a wonderful relationship with a beautiful and elegant language. If you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Comment, subscribe, and like. Thank you for watching Alhambra Studio Foundation. This is Aziz Life 360. Till next time, في أمان الله ورعايته والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. Greetings of peace, mercy, and blessings, everyone.